Hi, welcome, and thanks for listening to the very first episode of this podcast. My name is MK, and until about a month ago, as of this recording, I was the music director and afternoon host at an independent radio station here in the Hudson Valley, New York. I was with the station for 5 years and assumed I'd be there longer, but coronavirus had other plans. Like millions of other people in America right now, panicked budget cuts left me abruptly jobless. It's not where I thought I'd be at age 30, but I'm taking it as an opportunity. My favorite part of the radio job was always the interviews, so I thought, why stop? I turned my bedroom closet into a home recording studio, bought some used equipment, and decided to find out what the rest of the music industry is up to right now. How are they adapting to life in quarantine? How do they think the lessons we're learning now and the changing face of the music consumption landscape will affect the industry going forward? And more. As you'll hear in this first episode, the second half of each interview is devoted to a totally random, non-music topic, and that's when the real fun happens. I want to thank John Ferrara, the bassist from one of my very favorite bands to see live, Consider the Source. He was an incredible first guest, super easy to talk to, and very understanding of my inexperience with the digital audio workspace I'm now using. As you'll hear, there's a little background noise, which was totally my fault, but I've reduced it as much as I can, and I hope you'll be able to tune it out because John's got some great stuff to say in here. If you like the podcast, please subscribe or tell a friend, or follow it on Instagram at moremusic.podcast, or all of the above. Enjoy. Just jump right in. This is the first episode of the More Music Please podcast, and bassist extraordinaire John Ferrara was kind enough to join me. Thank you so much, John.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as we tried to figure out some technical difficulties, we were just talking a little bit about how the quarantine is going for you, and it sounds like overall you're having a decent time.
Yeah. I was saying I'm a hermit by nature. So I love, the thing that brings me the most joy, or one of the things that brings me the most joy, is just sitting and practicing, writing, creating. I'm learning how to, use Logic and record myself for the first time, which is embarrassing for how long it's taken me, but it's great. I've just been learning so many things that I've always wanted to learn, and writing a whole bunch of new music for my various projects, and it's been really great. I feel guilty saying it a little bit because I know it's been a struggle for a lot of people, and I've been really trying to reach out to friends and maybe even just loose acquaintances and just see how people are doing, because it is a rough time in general. But I've really been, trying to maximize it as much as I can.
Yeah, the guilt is real. I'm similarly in a privileged position. I mean, I did lose my full-time job of 5 years, which was a bummer, but, I'm lucky enough to be in a position where, I own my home, the mortgage is cheap, I live with my partner who I love, and we get along great, and we're not driving each other up the wall, which is a blessing, and, I'm safe, and I'm also kind of like, sort of like you, I'm like finding time to work on these projects, like putting together these podcasts that I've been wanting to do for years. So yeah, it's a weird time for everybody, and it certainly had its difficulties for me, but I know I'm really, really lucky in a lot of ways. How isolated are you? Do you live with anybody, or do you see anyone at all?
No, I'm on my own right now. I was down in Maryland with my girlfriend for about a month, but before this whole quarantine happened, we had decided that I was going to just go back and live in New York. She was going to live in Florida. She didn't really love living up here. So we were going to, go to our respective corners and refigure our living situation. So, I'm back here in New York now, and it's actually been really cool. Like I as soon as I came back, I mean, it was weird seeing the culture here, seeing just what it was like here, because I hadn't seen how crazy New York got.
Yeah.
It was like, I had heard, obviously my whole family's here, but Um, Getting back here and seeing just, you know, I don't know, just like, I guess like the general vibe being very like, at first not seeing as many cars out, not seeing as many people out was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been in New York the whole time, so I haven't really seen what it's like anywhere else. Was it really, it didn't happen so fast in other parts of the country?
Well, the funny thing is, well, where I was in Maryland, I was in a pretty remote part of it, so we didn't really, nothing really seemed any different for the most part. It was like way out there, a very small town, so like we would go out and like, we didn't go out a lot, but if we needed to go, like a doctor's appointment or pick up groceries, most people were just like doing their thing, at least at first, like not really wearing masks, not really doing the gloves thing. By the end of the month it was radically different, but for a while it seemed like, wow, I'm hearing all this crazy stuff about everywhere in the country, but it seems fine. Yeah, it was funny too, like right before this whole thing happened, Consider the Source was we were getting ready to tour. We were going to do like a big long tour.
I was gonna ask, so you got pretty thoroughly disrupted.
Oh yeah, but the weird thing was, we were on the road during the sort of tipping point from when it was like, what is this virus? Should we all be really worried? And we had, our president saying, don't worry about it, everything's fine, whatever. And the general culture went from being like, okay, maybe this is one thing, and then like within the course of a day or two, it seemed like it just reached that tipping point of it being like, no, this is very not cool. This is definitely not good. And we were in Ohio at that point during that tipping point.
Yeah.
And so we were like, wait, should we be canceling shows? Like, what are we doing? Like, some festivals are completely canceled right now. Maybe this stuff is like really, really real. And yeah, we decided to cancel the rest of our shows for that weekend and come home. And the whole thing just kind of happened very quickly.
Yeah. So at first it was like, let's go home and reevaluate. And then it was like, oh, like there's not going to be. So,
go home and stay home.
Yeah. So how are you guys as a band, as Consider the Source, how are you feeling about things? Are you just kind of like putting everything on hold until next year? Are you individually working on, your own stuff, or are you working on stuff together?
Yeah, kind of all of it. I mean, everything is on hold indefinitely.
Yeah.
We're sort of like planning as best as we can, but also realizing that you can't really. So pretty much like we're ready to pounce, we're ready to get back in it whenever bans are lifted and it seems like a safe and smart thing to do. But, like we're all handling it a little bit differently. I guess I'm trying to just be realistic and adapt as best as I can. Because it could be the case that concerts don't happen for a year or so.
Yeah.
There might be small scale concerts that happen. There might be outside concerts that end up happening with social distancing, but we don't know anything about that right now. So, it's really, really about finding the silver lining in all this right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hard to do that if your family has it, like if a family member has it and you're nervous or taking care of them or whatever, which also happened to me with several family members. So that part of it is one thing, and that's very heavy.
Yeah. How is everybody doing now in your family? Or did they recover?
Yeah, everyone's somehow okay.
Good.
Somehow, yeah.
Good. Super scary.
It was rough though for a while. Yeah. But so that aspect of it, like the safety aspect of it aside, I really think it's about just using this time wisely.
Well, you guys were early adopters on the live stream concerts, right? You were kind of at the forefront of that.
We started doing it pretty right away. Like I think it was like the next week after we stopped doing shows, we were like, let's just start doing lessons. Let's just start like having everyone sign on, and we'll do lessons and interact with our fans. And we've been doing that every week since. We've been changing it up and having not only lessons. Like Gabe did a cooking show last night, which was great. He's an awesome cook.
Does he cook on the road?
Yeah, he cooks on the road. He's
nice.
A messy chef though, man. Like he'll cook the most amazing meal, but then he just like leaves like cumin stains on the carpet, on the counter and everything.
Oh.
But it's okay. It's worth it. His food is so good. He's awesome.
He's like, I cooked. You guys clean up.
yeah, and gladly. It's great. But But yeah, so what we're trying to do now is just stay connected to our audience. Um, we're very fortunate in that because we play such weird kind of esoteric stuff, we kind of know that like a lot of our fans are people that we would be like hanging out with anyway.
Yeah.
Like they'd be buddies with us if we, like we do know a lot of them, and we are friends with a lot of them. A lot of them we have crossed the fan line into actual friendship. So for us, it's a lot of fun. We get to just, even though we're not like talking to anyone face to face, we get to interact with a lot of our like favorite people that we've, met over the years, and meet new people. And it's been really great in that way.
Yeah, I think one thing that, being isolated from each other has done is made us all realize the value of being connected to each other, and kind of redouble our efforts to do that in any way we can. Since we can't see each other in person right now, people are getting very creative with, ways to be together remotely. And yeah, the Skype lessons are great. The live stream concerts are great. Is it hard to teach over Skype? Is it any harder than doing it in person?
I've been teaching through Skype for almost 10 years now, and it's great. Like there's a few things that are setbacks. Like you can't jam with the person in real time. So I can't express like a certain musical concept, like how to use the modes for soloing, something like that. I could talk about it. I can have them loop themselves and solo over themselves, which is helpful and sort of gets the point across, but it's not quite the same as being able to jam together.
Yeah.
But that's really the only real drawback. Aside from that, it's really just a discussion. And a lot of my lessons, even when they're in person, are, a lot of it is just talking and getting concepts down, which is something I think is really important. So for me, it's not all that much different from the way I would normally teach.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, and the concert thing, I watched one of your shows one night, actually, one of the last nights before all gatherings were banned. I got together with another couple, me and my boyfriend, had a few drinks and watched your live stream. And it was really cool the way you did it. I think you had been planning on trying to get together in the same room and then realized that it wasn't going to be feasible. So you all did your own solo sets, you and Jeff and Gabe. What was that like for you guys?
It was weird. I think there's a thing about being a performer. You're playing for an audience. There's that symbiosis, which is awesome, and that's 90% of why we do it.
Yeah.
And this is weird because it's there, and you kind of know it's there, but you're also just playing for your freaking phone. So
yeah, is it a little like? Does it make you a little self-conscious in a way?
At first, it did, but between any other live streaming thing I've done in the past, and also the fact that in January for about 3 weekends I did solo shows. I was doing these solo house concerts, which were weird because I'd never really done that before. But by the end of it, I felt pretty comfortable just performing, and just me for, those sets were like an hour and 15 minutes. So this was just a half an hour of playing solo.
Yeah. So
that, a mixture between having some experience and also doing some solo live concerts made it, at least for me, pretty doable. I haven't really talked much to the guys about specifically how they feel about it, but Jeff is a pretty just like, screw it, let's just do it kind of guy. Like he's the least shy out of all of us with trying new things. So I have a feeling he was just fine. And I mean, listening to what Gabe did, it seemed like he was pretty comfortable. He sounded great.
Yeah.
So, it's also, I think musicians have to keep in mind that this is just the new standard for a while.
Yeah.
So if there's technological difficulties, or self-consciousness or anything like that, we're all in that boat.
Yeah.
Very
absolutely.
few of us feel super confident about just being in front of a camera and a new microphone setup that hopefully works. I think we have to just and consumers of the music now who are all just at home on their devices watching, I think all those things are either overtly or unconsciously being taken into consideration. So
yeah,
I think we all gotta just do it, and embrace the awkwardness of it.
Yeah, no one's being too hard on anybody right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
At least they shouldn't be. You've been crushing it on social media too. You are very active on Instagram. You're always, kind of like putting little video clips out on your stories and on your feed of stuff you're working on. And how's the response been for that?
It's been good. Yeah, I've always had like a weird relationship with social media because when I'm on tour, I'm kind of like a different person. Like my sleeping habits are different. My everything about my life just gets changed, right? Because now you're on like tour time. So I'm not always the most consistent with posting throughout the course of my career. Like I'll go like a month of posting almost every day, and I'll be updating stories with interesting things that I see or ideas that I have, like musical ideas. And then for like a month or two, I'll post like once a week or something. During this time, it's I got all the time in the world. So all I'm doing is sitting and playing, so I can be constantly updating it with books I'm reading or like cool music. Like today I just did a story about like this Indian rhythmic book that I've been using for years that I think is really beneficial, and a tapping idea, and releasing a bunch of solo pieces that I had released a while ago but could never release on Instagram because they were more than a minute. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about ways to interact with followers through there, and it's been a lot of fun actually. I've actually met a lot of people. I've been getting some messages from just strangers from around the world.
Yeah.
Some of them are lesson requests, some of them are just conversations, and it's been cool to see how much more open across the board we are to like just reach out and talk to people.
Yeah.
Like I've just been having conversations with like total strangers, and it's been really cool.
And in a nice way, not a weird way.
Not in a weird way. Yeah, exactly. There's a softness that I think not everybody, but that a lot of people are developing now, because it's like, there's the whole, you think about it in like the we're all one kind of way, and people have like their own, feelings about that. But like this is really showing us like this is the sort of thing where regardless of where you are in the world, your race or your gender or your political affiliation or anything, it's like we're all quarantined. We're all worried about our family members and ourselves and all that. So I think people are in general just a little bit more apt to just reach out and be cool. At least that's what I've been seeing. On the news, I don't always see that. I see, all sorts of crazy things happen, but my experience has been pretty positive with interacting with people so far.
Yeah, same. Except, in person, it kind of varies, though. Like, I've been out on, like, a few hikes where, like, and of course I understand people being, cautious and wanting to cover their faces and kind of stand back from each other, but there's, like, almost, like, kind of nasty looks that you get out in public sometimes just for like being close to somebody, even if you don't mean to be, or like you can't help it. Like, yeah, so I don't know, maybe that's just the difference between the people who have to go outside and the people who don't.
Yeah, I guess that is true. Yeah, I guess when I was shopping, there was a few moments of people like scurrying away from me very quickly, even though I'm wearing the mask and sanitizing constantly and all that. Yeah. But man, a little bit of a side note though, there was one moment that just like blew my mind. It was this woman who, this was when I was leaving Maryland, coming back up to New York. Now, there was, oh man, there must have been like hundreds of people in this place, right? Like I thought it was going to be, I tried to do my shopping down there so that I can, not be in like the hustle and bustle of up here. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be better. It was not. And most of us, though, at that point were wearing masks and gloves or some configuration of them, right? This one woman is just not wearing gloves, not wearing a mask, just picking up a head of lettuce. Nope, not that one. Picking up another one. Not that. Just one after another. I wanted that lettuce. I really wanted that lettuce. And it was almost like she was doing it out of spite,
That's like deliberate.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? Come on.
Oh my
gosh. At least try. At least, come on.
Yeah, I was going to say I did actually have kind of an opposite experience in a grocery store maybe 2 weeks back where I was in the cheese aisle and I was looking for one particular type of cheese and there was only one bag of it left. It was like shredded mozzarella and, I had my little face mask on and there was a guy next to me who also had a face mask on and he was also looking at the cheese. And I was like, I was looking at this last bag of shredded mozzarella and I was like, are you going for that mozzarella? Because I don't want to take the last bag on you. And he was like, no, oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking. Like, it was the sweetest, like, cutest interaction.
That's great.
Like, both of us just trying so hard to, like, not be, the hoarder.
They call that a mitzvah.
Yeah. That feels, while we're talking about kind of human connectedness, that feels like a good segue into our next topic, which I'm so glad you suggested, which is Eastern religion and the new Netflix show Midnight Gospel, which thanks to you, I binged over the last few days. I was just going to like watch a couple episodes just so I had like a little bit of frame of reference. And then of course I had to see the whole thing. So how did you start watching it and what's, let's jump in. How do you feel about it?
Well, okay, so I'm a big Adventure Time fan.
Me too.
So, it was brought to my attention from a student / friend of mine who said, he specifically said this, he said, you have to watch Midnight Gospel and you have to smoke a joint while you watch it. And he knows that I don't smoke. So I used to when I was younger and I stopped, and every once in a very rare while I will. So he's like, listen, I know we're in quarantine. I'm gonna roll you a joint. I'm gonna leave it in your mailbox, and then you're just gonna watch the show and see what happens. So I'm like, all right. I mean, I'm already excited about it because I love Adventure Time. I didn't intend on smoking, but if he insisted, so that's exactly what I did. I put it on. First episode blew my mind.
Oh, God, yeah.
Absolutely, it's hysterical. First of all, and just the whole conversation and every single, I actually stopped at episode 5. I've been watching them kind of slowly because I want to savor it. But every episode deals with, some form of Eastern philosophy, whether it's, Buddhism or just like mindfulness in general, which is a big movement that's happening now where it's not even really necessarily considered Buddhism. It's just the term mindfulness.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing where I feel like, especially now, we can all really benefit from if we're not, kind of being mindful, if we're not like acting like that in our daily life. And this show just presents it to everyone in such a great way, because you don't even realize necessarily that's what it is, because it's funny and it's violent at moments and it's way over the top at moments. It's all these things that like normal people would gravitate towards in cartoons, like Rick and Morty, for example. Yeah. Love Rick and Morty to death. But it's the sort of thing, like it touches on a lot of things. Science nerds love it. Comedy people love it. Animation, like has like all those elements. And you watch that for all those things. This has all those, but it also has specifically this underlying Eastern philosophy to it that, like, you don't even realize you're learning it. It helps everybody. And I don't know, I guess I just love that people are being introduced to it, because I think a lot of people aren't, and they totally should.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty powerful stuff. I mean, so I like you, I used to smoke a lot of weed when I was younger. Recently I haven't. In fact, pretty much this whole quarantine I haven't been, just because like every time I think about it, I'm like, you know what, like I'm already like baseline anxious right now. Like, let me not take the risk of like making myself even more anxious. So, all of my friends, just like yours, had said, oh, you have to watch this show and you got to get high first. And I actually decided not to. I just drank like 2 glasses of wine and that was great for me. And it has really made me think about my outlook, like the last couple of days watching it. I mean, especially, I think you've gotten to this episode, the one about magic.
Oh, yeah.
Really blew my mind, because that's stuff, that I used to be very into when I was younger. Like, I spent a summer in the Adirondacks working as a backcountry steward for the DEC, which basically meant I was just alone in the woods for, 3-4 days at a time. And I was really into Castaneda, and I was really into Alan Watts.
I was
into I was all into that stuff, and like I I think I was a lot more present at that time because I was just alone in the woods, and like I was, I didn't have headphones or anything with me. I was just like, in the moment, and really believed in like not even believed in, just was more aware of like connection and energy and all of that stuff. And I feel like I've kind of forgotten about it over the last few years. And listening to that episode, watching that episode, I was like, oh my God, like I've been forgetting something really important here. So yeah, like all of the discussion about mindfulness and presence, and yeah, like you said, in a way that's super digestible for people, and might introduce those concepts to people who wouldn't have even been thinking about it, is powerful stuff. And do you know anything about like how the show came to be? Because obviously it's Penn Ward Animation, who's great and has this really like childlike style that's very fluid and really nice to look at, but can also be, like you said, very like violent all of a sudden, and it's hilarious, and the way he uses motion and stuff. But it's Duncan Trussell, I guess, is the host of the like podcast. Is it a podcast? Because that's what it sounds like. It's like audio from a podcast, and then they went back and like also recorded bits to turn them into these weird little like vignettes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm not sure about. I'm not sure if these were just like they did a podcast and then they were like, these are great. It would be great to make a cartoon out of this, or if they had the whole thing in mind in the first place. But what I understand is that someone told me that it was like conversations, and then they added other elements, like the moments in the cartoon where it's where they kind of interact with the story more, when it's not just the two of them. Like those were added in post, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. But I think the idea was to have a very natural dialogue. Like you could even hear in some of them that they're kind of stumbling over their words, or like stopping for a second to really think about what they're saying. Like it's very natural.
Yeah, which I love. Yeah, I love that.
Which is great, that's actual human discourse, that's actually an actual human conversation, which I think is just so great.
Yeah, not scripted. Yeah, I love that. I actually found it easier sometimes when I actually am doing a lot of puzzles just because it's a thing to do inside during quarantine.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've got this puzzle I'm working on in the living room right now, and I found myself, with the episodes playing in the background, and I would be working on the puzzle instead of watching the animation most of the time, because it was like easier to absorb the conversation. Like I found myself, like I would glance up and like see, what kind of chaos was happening on the screen, but like I kind of, in some episodes preferred to just listen like a podcast. Yeah,
I did that too. I watched those 5 episodes like a few times each at this point, and a couple of the passes I just closed my eyes and just listened to it. It's interesting seeing though, like how some of the episodes are very related to the animation, and some seem to not be, but maybe they are, and you have to kind of like figure out how or why or when they're related. But I'll say this, the 5th episode, which is, I think it was called The Annihilation of Joy. That was the one where he becomes like the rainbow like xylophone thing.
Yes.
And
oh my God, and the guy keeps dying over and over.
Talking on behalf of the jailmate.
Yeah.
Now that was the most like that's just like a straight up allegory for Buddhism, like 100%. It's this guy has so much rage and so much pain, and he keeps on cycling through what I guess you would consider maybe his karma, like over and over again. It's like he's doing this thing, he's angry, he shoots the guard, right? He fights with his cellmate, right? And then it's like it takes you out of it, and then they take his heart out and they weigh it against the feather, and they see that it's heavier than the feather, and then he goes right back to it and does it again. And this whole thing is happening again and again until one moment he realizes, wait a minute, let me step aside and like do something different this time. And then that gets him a little bit further along the path. And then something else happens that's too heavy for him to handle, and he loses his temper and he goes crazy, and then he has to start right over again. And every single time from that moment on, he gets a little bit better, and then one time he gets really bad again, and he goes all the way back down again. And he keeps on trying, and that's, a thing that's talked about a lot in Buddhism. This idea that we have to just keep on doing it. We have to keep on living. We have to keep on trying things and trying to refine. And every time it doesn't work out, every time pain is there again, we have to just be with it and be cool with it, and like accept it, don't avoid it, but also don't let it own you, and learn from it. And that's all you can really do. And it's that process that we have to do over and over and over and over again until we kind of get it. And that whole episode was exactly about that. And it was really the whole dialogue in that, and just having that being played in the background was just like so brilliant. It was so well done. And the cool thing is, like, so for me, like I wouldn't say I practice, like I don't have like a daily meditation ritual or anything. I do meditate, but not like that formally. But but I have a grounding in Buddhism and Taoism to some extent. Mm-hmm. But I think for people who don't, seeing an episode like that, it seeps into your subconscious, like what's going on with that guy. You know, he's like gradually just learning and refining his soul. Essentially, he's just getting more and more compassionate.
Yeah.
You know, learning that, like, oh wait, this cellmate, he's just like me. He's angry just like me. I remember like that part where he keeps on like seeing his face in them. Mm-hmm. You know, like it was really cool. It's like, and once he started seeing that we're all the same thing, he started having compassion for them. And then instead of trying to kill them, he wouldn't let them harm him. Like he would jump out of the way if they were going to do it anyways. Like, all right, man, that's your journey. Do your thing, but I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so cool. All the episodes were brilliant, but that one really stuck to me as being like, man, that like really hit home.
It is. It's a perfect visual representation of that concept. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, I was stone sober watching that one, and I was moved, you know, and when he kind of starts to, like, the weight of what's happening and, you know, the futility of the struggle, or how futile it feels, starts to hit him, and he comes back and he's just weeping at the beginning of the cycle. And there was one, oh my God, there's an image in that episode that, like, I almost wish I hadn't seen. And it's like, this is so, like, this is just like, you know, I have 2 dogs and like I can't handle like anything sad related to dogs, but there's a very brief image of like a dead dog and a puppy, and I was like, oh my God. And then it goes back into like another, like, you know, the guy just weeping and trying to struggle through this cycle, and like, you know, the conversation they're having, and like I was like, oh my God, like this is a lot. but yeah, and then ultimately, at the end of the journey is he realizes that, you know, everything violent he's doing to, you know, the external world, he's only doing to himself. And the resolution of the weighing the soul against the feather, which is like a concept that, you know, I've heard talked about. I can't remember what religion. Is that from Eastern religion, that the weighing the soul against a feather?
You know, I'm actually not 100% sure, but I have heard that before, you know, but it's, but you get it. Like you see that and you're like, okay, I kind of get it. I know what that's referring to.
I know. And I always thought, like, thought when I thought about that concept, like, God, that's impossible. Like, you know, just like an idle, like passing thought, like, man, like what a weird, you know, concept, weighing a soul against a feather, like what could be lighter than a feather. And ultimately, when his soul is lighter than a feather is when it's not weighed. It's when they give it back to him, because it's complete, because it's whole, you know? And I was like, oh my God, like that's the end of the cycle. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's, I know I'm on this path too. And I'm like, you know, like I've had like, you know, ups and downs emotionally in my life and whatever. And every time I come back to something that reminds me of these principles, I almost immediately start feeling at least a little bit better. You know, it's really about not trying to change things, not trying to change the world or the people around you, because everything's always going to be in flux, as are you, you know? So like, it's really about changing your relationship to things. You know, like we can't change that COVID's happening. That's just happening. So what can we do? We can be there for each other. We can take care of our bodies and our minds. We can, you know, pick up hobbies that we haven't been doing or always wanted to do. You know, it's trying to not repress, because a lot of the times that's what we do instead. We repress things because our brains are built to do that. We're built with these defense mechanisms. Like, that doesn't feel good. I don't want to deal with that. So it's hard work to do it, but we become better and happier, and we have that ripple effect on other people when we follow that. So
and on ourselves. And it's like you said, it's not about, you know, not being bummed out that there's a quarantine and all of our lives are being disrupted, but it's about how do you respond to that. And it's not a virtue judgment, if somebody's response right now, if all they can do is to, feel depressed or kind of shut down, like it's not saying that that person is like worse or less spiritually, has their shit together or anything like that. It's not a virtue judgment. It's just like, it's hard to respond in a way that's positive sometimes. But, like you said, even being reminded that it's an option, that we do have that control, however hard it may be, makes you kind of want to put a little more effort in. I mean, the day that I watched the episode about magic, I was having a really kind of rough day because I was worried about, I still haven't managed to get on unemployment and I'm worried about that. And, I was like stressing about it a lot that day. And then I watched that and I was like, oh, like, yeah, like I can't change the fact that I'm having a hard time hearing back from, I haven't heard back from the unemployment office, but like being anxious about that and putting a lot of energy into that doesn't serve me. It doesn't change the situation. It doesn't make it any better. So, I need to use my time better and use my energy better. And, I can still be in the reality of that situation, which is like needing to, have them call me back, but like, I can't make them call me back. So in the meantime, like I can either, be bummed about it, or I can, work on my podcast. I can work on some music. I can, and that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. It's the, in Buddhism, they refer to that as like it's a general concept of the second arrow. So the first arrow is just the inevitable uncomfortable or suffering, in the world. So like for you in that instance, it's this awful unemployment system that so many people who need it and deserve it are not getting it. My girlfriend is in that same boat.
Yeah.
So that's the first arrow, right? And then the initial, okay, all right, what am I going to do? The second arrow is all the worrying and the stories that play out in our brains of what's going to happen now. Like, this is it. I'm screwed. I have rent to pay. I have to be able to eat. I have to be able to sustain myself. Oh my God, this is all so rough. How are we going to do that? That whole rabbit hole? That's the second arrow. That's the stuff that we put on top of it. And if we don't invest in those things, we have more creativity in how we respond to the first arrow.
Yeah.
You can say, instead change it to, okay, we're all in the same boat. Millions of people are feeling this with me right now. We're not all going to, it's going to be figured out one way or another. And or let's say things get really bad. What are the things that I do have in my life that I can focus on that'll calm me down, make me happy, and make me stronger overall? Because another whole element of this is that we're whipping our brain into shape and our heart into shape. We're saying, okay, how can we use our brain to inform our heart what to do? You're informing, like right there, you're changing this ingrained habit to go to the dark side. And instead you're saying, okay, how can I use my brain, my creativity, my compassion to grow from this? To make myself a little bit better, a little bit calmer. Also keeping in mind that in doing that, I'm going to positively affect the people around me. It's a really cool ripple effect that happens too. So it also reinforces it in yourself to handle situations better. And look, I'm saying all this. I'm not saying I do this. I'm not saying I'm like at all perfect at this. But that's the idea. And anytime I have done it, it's awesome.
Yeah, it really is enough to know that it's something we have the power to do. And if you can internalize and hang on to that, that knowledge that the power to do that is within you, then it gets easier and easier. Like I was saying, when I was in the woods and like immediately after coming out of that experience, I think was the most mindful I've ever been. I felt like I had full control over how I responded to things. And, that's a real struggle, but you can get there. I mean, if I can get there, I think anybody can get there. So that is definitely something I'm going to be working on more for the remainder of this quarantine and hopefully beyond.
Yeah. When you first mentioned it, I wanted to talk for a second about, years ago, I went on a meditation retreat out in California, and it was a silent retreat. So it was pretty much, you meditated and they showed you different methods of meditation, and you would kind of go back and forth between those methods all day. And no talking. Not even no talking, but no communicating. So you couldn't even like nudge to the person next to you and ask them to pass the salt.
Huh.
You know, like you had to just like, you could sit next to them, but you can't communicate with them. They're having their experience and you're having your experience, and that's it. First 2 days, I wanted to kill myself. It was awful. It was, you know, no cell phone, no computer, no communication with the outside world at all. And it was also, you know, it was in the woods, although it was a kind of like a compound. But you can go off on walks and just explore the woods around it and everything. And as the days went on, you know, it's like you're really kind of like being in quarantine in a way, although we have social media, you know, to keep us company. But, you know, you're all by yourself, you know, and you're stuck with your thoughts. You're stuck with your neuroses. You're stuck with your really ugly, judgmental, shitty self. You know, like all the things about you that maybe you didn't think you were that way, but when the dust settles of everything else in your life, and you get and then what raises up is not only ugliness, but a lot of the, you know, jealousy issues or anger or judgments or whatever. You know, you really take a look at yourself and you're like, wow, so I'm made of this stuff too, huh? Wow, I've been ignoring that for a long time. And you have to just meditate and be mindful through the whole thing. Not judge yourself, just ask yourself, okay, why is that here? Where did that stem from? How can I look at this in a way where I can still feel compassion for myself? And dude, it is hard. It is really hard to do, you know, because you really start thinking about really painful things that have happened that led you to a certain physiological response, right? That you just naturally have now because of that. And you have to actually work through it. And you have no choice. You have to do it. Or, I mean, you could leave. They're not like holding you there by gunpoint, but, you know, first of all, you're like 2 hours in the middle of nowhere in Northern California. So where are you going to go?
And you paid to be there, I'm sure. So you're like, let me just do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, might as well. But same deal. When I was done with that weekend, man, it was, I feel like I leveled up like so much.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel, you know, it's not like you leave it feeling happier or anything like that right off the bat, but you leave it with tools of like, okay, all right, I kind of know myself a little bit better now, and I know that I'm on a path now that I don't know if I can go back from, which is really, really cool. And it was one of the most profound things I ever did. And ever since then, if not meditating, I'm at least trying to be mindful and trying to better myself and seeing my brain go to places and saying, nope, don't do that.
Yeah.
Which is super helpful.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of another thing that came up on Midnight Gospel. I think in the first episode, they were talking a little bit about psychedelics and about weed and about how, you know, and I think this is why I haven't been smoking weed in quarantine, because they brought up how, you know, it can kind of make you look at the parts of yourself that you don't necessarily want to look at. And a lot of people just classify that as paranoia, but it's really just like being forced to confront the uncomfortable parts of yourself. And, you know, it's I think it's I don't want to call it a quick and dirty way to get there compared to, you know, going out and just being sober and sitting with your thoughts and being in silence, but it's certainly a more accessible way, you know, for most people day to day. And yeah, that's all it seems to do for me lately. So maybe I have some real internal work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to say that to myself too. Like, I'm not good at smoking weed.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, my relationship to it is just, it's something different. But you know, and I thought that episode made a lot of great points. Like, I used to be very anti any drugs aside from weed because I smoked it when I was younger. I was very against it, but it was because of my not my relationship to doing it, because I hadn't done any at that point. But it was what I saw from other people who were doing it. And it just happened to be the people that I knew that were experimenting with different, very varied kinds of drugs. They were doing it in like, you know, almost like a dick measuring contest kind of way.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, dude, I took 1 billion tabs of acid. I fucking, you know, like, yeah, like, okay, good for you. And then I started seeing, my ex-girlfriend was like the first person to introduce me to like mushrooms, for example.
Yeah.
And her relationship to it was the opposite. It was like, I become better when I do this, and I don't do it all the time. I do it when I feel like I'm ready to, and I just let whatever happens happen, and I learn from it and I grow from it. And so I was like, all right, I love this person, I trust this person. They're speaking about it very eloquently, which I typically didn't hear people, like just the people that I happen to know that did it, had a different kind of relationship to it. So I was like, all right, I'll try it. And then I started seeing like, oh my God, like I was wrong the whole time. This is great. And the whole point of that episode, that the the president guy, who was one of the funniest characters I've ever seen in anything ever.
Oh, glasses guy. I wish he was our real president.
Oh, me too. Oh, me too. Yeah. Imagine one that could convey things eloquently. Jeez. But yeah, like he was so right. It's not the drug that's the problem. There's a time and place for everything. Yeah. Like Valium, if you're having a colonoscopy, great drug. But that's what I was, beginning to see, was that it wasn't the drug so much. It was people's misuse of them.
Absolutely.
And not doing them for the right reason. And that's the thing. So now, like, I don't do much of anything. And actually, through this whole quarantine, I even stopped drinking. I'm not doing like anything right now. Yeah, like I'll say, because I was able to come to psychedelics from that direction, I have a relationship to it that's more the way the little glasses president guy said it. It's more like, do them when it's the right time to do them, but don't abuse them. And that's really the thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, I take it that way as well. And I always have, and I never really understood, because the first time I did a psychedelic, and afterwards I was like, that was a profound experience. That was not like a fun party time. Like that was, I'm glad I did it. And I learned so much. And like, I always felt like, taking acid or mushrooms was kind of like hitting reset on your brain in a lot of ways. And like, you come out of it with this really refreshed understanding of things, and like your body feels light, and you feel, and for a while afterwards, for at least a couple hours after a trip, you have a much deeper understanding of your connection to the universe and just kind of the connectedness of all things. And then it fades away after a while, and, you go back to kind of, being, unless you are a very mindful person, in which case I'm sure you feel that way all the time. But yeah, I think it's a very powerful spiritual tool, and hopefully people are starting to see it that way. And, I love that, there's starting to be some study into using psychedelics for therapy. I think that's an amazing idea. Like, what better way to like really take a look at your inner psyche, and, even using like MDMA for therapy, I think is great. I mean, that's what it was initially intended for. Yeah. Like, I don't know how much I should incriminate myself, but I don't think anyone's coming after me. But last time I took mushrooms and ecstasy together, I ended up like, I was at a twiddle show with a bunch of my friends.
Makes sense.
And I was in the crowd, and I was like, the mushrooms were hitting, and I was starting to have some of that mushroom anxiety come up, just all of those thoughts about, just insecurities and anxieties of mine. But because of the ecstasy, instead of like internalizing them, it was like I was watching them float by and then letting them go. And the next day, I still felt, carried over from that. I felt like some things had been kind of solved. And yeah, I think if everybody could be more open-minded to that, I think that'd be a really good thing for humanity.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think like the thing with MDMA is like anytime I've done it, like some people feel like the crash the next day, but for me that doesn't happen. I always feel like at least I actually feel better for the next couple of days.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so there's that. Now here's the one thing though, is that back to that episode and him and what he was saying about like, a time and a place for it. So I'm not convinced that it's wise to substitute what mindfulness can do for them.
Right.
I think they should both be happening. I think it's the sort of thing where, I mean, it's even with smoking weed, like, I know a lot of people that they just smoke all day, every day, and this is not coming from a judgmental place. I'm just concerned that a lot of the times it looks like they feel good on it, and their brain might operate and might make connections better on it, which is awesome. But sometimes it seems like a crutch, and sometimes it seems like if they don't have the weed, all of a sudden they're angry and they're not handling stuff well, and I think the point of mindfulness is, like, in any way you can get it, right? Substances aside, is that it's, if you are committed to it, it's lifelong. Because that's really, it's not temporarily changing the way your brain works, it's permanently.
Yeah.
It's literally changing the neural structure of your brain, right? And they say mushrooms can do that too, right? Which is great. But same deal. I mean, I've done mushrooms and acid and all sorts of things, and I still feel like if I'm not coupling that with some form of regular practice of like really taking care of my brain, it doesn't have the lasting effect as much.
Absolutely. I think you get way more out of it if you are a regular practitioner and you're regularly, trying to, in your daily life, give yourself that mindfulness and that, clarity. Because, you have that clarity, and like you said, you get kind of that clarity hangover, but it's not going to last as long or, long at all if you don't do the work day to day.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that's my only concern. I don't do much. Like a couple times a year I'll indulge in something, Yeah. But it's great though. Like if you're doing it from the right place, I really think it's beneficial. I think it really is just a matter of just being careful about it.
Absolutely. And I've never, I've had conversations with friends who have been curious about it, and, I've told them my experiences, and they've been like, I don't think it doesn't seem like it's right for me. And my response to that is always, then don't do it. Like, if you don't feel like it's right for you for any reason, if your head or your heart or any part of you is telling you no, then listen to that.
I think that's great advice. I think that's the way to see it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And if your mind changes at any point, then, feel free, like, do it with someone you trust. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we are 52 minutes in, John, and I think that's an incredible place to leave it.
Sounds great. Yeah, this has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the first ever episode of this podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for thinking of me. It's been a pleasure.
I want to, before I let you go, have you plug whatever you'd like to plug. Where can we find your music and go for lessons and everything?
Yeah, so you can go to considerthesourcemusic.com. That's my main project, and that's we have links for lessons and all of our videos and all of our music there. You can also go to johnferraramusic.com, and I have links to my Instagram and my Facebook page, which has a lot of stuff that's going on in my bass world. I'm doing a lot of solo performances right now. I'm going to be doing them each week through either Facebook or Instagram or my YouTube page. But all that information you can get from my website, johnferraramusic.com.
Great. Thanks again, and good luck in quarantine. I guess we'll talk to you on the other side.
Sounds great. Yeah. Good luck. Be safe.
Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time.